Squad member Ilhan Omar has likened the United States and its closest Middle East ally to major foreign terrorist groups. The Minnesota congresswoman tweeted, "We must have the same level of accountability and justice for all victims of crimes against humanity. We have seen unthinkable atrocities committed by the U.S., Hamas, Israel, Afghanistan, and the Taliban." Power panel now. Judy Miller, Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter, Manhattan Institute adjunct fellow, and Fox News contributor. Great to see you today. And Jason Meister, former Trump Advisory Board member. Good to see you too, Jason. All right, let's just start with what she said and the equating, Jason, of the United States to some of the most thirsty killers and terrorists in the world.
Yeah, Harris, look, a U.S. Congresswoman comparing America and Israel to Hamas and the Taliban is absolutely repulsive. It's disgusting and it's vile, but it represents and is indicative of, in my view, a much larger issue, which is that hatred for America and hatred for Israel has really become mainstream in today's Democratic Party. It's no longer fringe. And it's not only permeating in the halls of Congress, but it also permeates through our pop culture. It permeates through our education system. And that's why the left vilifies America through things like critical race theory, the 1619 Project, and other revisionist history. I mean, it begs the question, how do we lead a nation when our elected officials hate the country in which they're supposed to serve?
I'll put that question to you, Judy Miller.
Well, you will be surprised to see that I agree with Jason on one point, and that is that what she said was simply unacceptable and ludicrous. But I disagree that this represents the mainstream of the Democratic Party. In fact, what Ilhan Omar said is basically out of step with President Biden's position, with the position of his administration, and with the interests of not only of the Democratic Party, but of the nation itself.
So, Judy,
and I believe that she represents a fringe and not the mainstream support for Israel that the Democrats have long supported.
So why don't we, and we'll just do this quickly and move on, but why don't we see the push from Democrats then saying Ilhan Omar does not represent them, and that the words were, you say out of step, I would imagine if they don't represent you, those horrible words she spoke, you might have some stronger things to say than out of step. Real quickly, why don't we see that from Democratic leaders?
I think that, as you well know, Harris, there is a fight within the Democratic Party over what policy is going to be.
But yeah, but there's not a fight over free speech. So those who don't agree could easily speak up.
I think most Democrats understand that the president speaks for the party, not Ilhan Omar.
Wow. Okay. We'll move on. Wes, oh gosh, and now my mind just goes to Kamala Harris, who says don't come, but he says do. Oh, goodness, it's only an hour show. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin met this morning with leaders from the NAACP on voting rights. This after Manchin published a weekend op-ed saying the S1 election bill Democrats are pushing is too broad and too partisan and will only divide the country more. Now his own party and members of the media are going after him. Let's watch. And Jason, I'll come right to you.
The blow comes from West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin.
That could sink the move to override Republican state laws that limit voting access.
Joe Manchin has become the new Mitch McConnell.
Senator Manchin would rather preserve Jim Crow.
West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin has wittingly or unwittingly ushered in an official death sentence for most of the Biden agenda.
Should Republicans put out a call to Joe Manchin? Because it sounds like the Democrats don't want him. Jason?
Harris, Manchin is doing absolutely the right thing to save our democracy and our constitutional republic from a bill that would legalize election fraud on a federal level. Democrats are 100% ready to codify universal mail-in voting, no ID check, no signature check, voting rules, stripping away the state's power to regulate their own voting, which has been in effect for over 200 years. And yeah, I understand that we just came off of an election, in the 2020 election, where we changed the rules in which we vote because in the name of COVID and a pandemic. But we can never allow that to happen again. And that's personally why I was very disappointed in the Supreme Court of the United States in not taking in what I believe to be very good on the merit cases and striking them down on standing. and not on the merits. So I think that Manchin is doing absolutely the right thing here in going against this bill.
You know, Judy, in all the years I've known you, you said one of the things that makes politics powerful is the fact that it should invite every voice. Do you think the Democrats are in danger now of not just not inviting them? You heard what the president said about Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin because they don't vote with him on certain issues. Are they in danger of ostracizing a lot of people who might think like Manchin and Sinema?
I don't think they can afford to ostracize Joe Manchin. I mean, Joe Manchin was the swing vote that they desperately needed to pass the legislation.
What if he swings to the other side now, permanently?
I think he's pursuing both his personal and his political interests because he does favor some voting rights legislation, just one of the two bills that the administration has proposed. And I think he genuinely wants bipartisan buy-in. I think he understands that continuing the polarization of this country and partisanship is a bad thing for Democrats, for Republicans, and for the country.
We have a lot of reporting that Senator Manchin's doing a lot of work bipartisan behind the scenes, but that filibuster, if he goes against Democrats on that, real quickly, Jason, how tough is that going to be on the Hill with Democrats?
Yeah, look, the way I see it, we're being threatened with one-party rule, and the Democrats are on a power grab, and I think it's important that Manchin do the right thing here, and I think he will, in the end, do the right thing, and so I think he'll save our democracy and our constitutional republic.
All right, real quickly, Texas Republicans are taking control of a pair of cities in Democratic counties with 2 mayoral wins just over the weekend. The GOP especially excited about the victory in McAllen, a border city that's 85% Hispanic. The GOP sees this win as a promising sign for the 2022 midterm elections. Why is that, Jason?
Look, I think that there's an important power grab here, and so I think the Democrats are going to be at a risk here, and I think the Republicans will win.
Judy.
I don't think he knows that. I don't think anyone can predict that right now. But I'll say this, Democrats just have to stop treating Hispanics like victims and people of color or part of the Black Lives Matter movement. They are not. They conceive of themselves as immigrants striving for the American way. Every Democratic poll shows that. The party seems not to be listening to its own pollsters.
Well, they read a lot of the polls because whenever I interview somebody from that party, they always tell me what the polling says. And maybe it's the border crisis, too, playing a role in all this, too. We'll find out. But 85% of the vote, whew, that's a lot. Yeah, good to see you both. Jason, Judy, thank you.
Thank you for having us.